Hello, how are you?
Hello.
How you doing?
All right.
I want to thank Sister Leslie for this invitation to come here. And it is a joy always to be at the Clef Club and seeing everyone here who kind of enjoy not only people talking and performing, but also if you sit here quietly, you can hear the music that resonates already in this place called the Clef Club, in this place called Philadelphia. It's always a joy to see our dear Sister Linda and to listen to her as she gives us the words of the Spirit, the words of what I call flesh and wind, and that is so important. And it's always good to hear these young brothers also, because you know then that this great tradition of poetry is in good hands. And that's what this is about, keeping this in good hands. And so I want to thank everyone for the invite. I want to thank everyone for being here, listening to something called poetry. Poetry, which quite often keeps us alive. You know, it keeps me alive. I've just finished 2 books and I just like am on like I'm almost like down at this point. You know, when you send stuff out, you just kind of like turning around, looking over your shoulders for another word, another book. Last night they honored a woman by the name of Toni Morrison in a place called Howard University. A very wonderful critic, Dr. Eleanor Traylor, was the person in charge of that, and people came from all over to pay homage to her and her new book. If you have not gotten it, I hope you do get it, because it is brilliant writing. But one of the things that you always understand at some point is that we do this thing called writing. We play with this thing called language. We play with this thing called words, because these are the things that keep us alive, these words, this language. This language that says, keep quiet sometimes, don't say all that you know. This language, these words that say sometimes you got to say it now, now is the time to say it. These words, this language that says simply, you got to praise God sometimes along the way. These words, this language that says you got to praise children sometimes along the way. And sometimes we've got to praise ourselves. Because one of the things you see sometimes is that we manage not to praise ourselves. I'm not talking about ego. I'm talking about praising and loving ourselves. When we breathe out, loving this breath. When we breathe in, loving the breath. When we breathe out, understanding simply that quite often we breathe in. When I teach the haiku in my classes, I say, a lot of the students say, is it really 575, Professor Sanchez, 17 syllables? I say, no, what it is that the first line must be short, the second line a little longer, and the third line a little shorter also too. But what it is that how can you say it in one breath? It is always inhaling, and the haiku is a very healing form as a consequence. Because if you breathe it in and say, let me wear the day well, so when it reaches you, you will enjoy it. And you truly understand what you said to an audience, what you said to yourselves, what you said to a people, this kind of thing. And so, if we remember our poem at all, when we exit here, let us go out in a peaceful fashion. Let us go out in the way that we brought peace to a place called Washington, D.C. when Obama was inaugurated. Being down there in a place called Washington, you saw the peace among people. You did. Just like the $1 million, remember the Million Man March, remember? It was peaceful. I mean, people came with peace, if you truly understand that. And the same thing here. People moved in a very peaceful fashion with each other. And you and I understand also, too, that our dear president will never get everything done if we don't help him.
Yes.
You see, it's one thing to elect somebody, it's another thing also to help them. So, I don't know, some of you are too young to remember that some of us used to go and sit in the Senate when the senators acted like fools, we booed.
Yeah.
You know, you have to boo them.
That's right.
And they've been acting like fools again. You know, you saw it, they managed to put some kind of thing together. But because we have a young, new president, and we have old people in the Senate. You know, and those people are still who they are. You know. And the point is, you've got to go in and say, we know who you be. We know who you is. I know I teach English. We know who you is. And so we is here to help you pass this. And that's real. That's not make-believe. That's activism, my dear brothers and sisters. You know, you cannot lay back in the cut and say they'll do it. They won't do it. They'll promise anything. They promise you everything, and they get in and they revert. They promised that we would stop the war. And the war still goes on. Make no mistake about it. You know, and you and I understand the need for us to stop this war. Some of the grandmothers in New York and grandmothers in Philadelphia got arrested here in Philadelphia. I got arrested along with them. It reminded me of years ago. It reminded me at some point that we must deal with peace. You see, we wonder why our children kill. They have great examples of killings around us. Not only in our neighborhoods, but in our country and in the world. We have countries that kill. You know, we have the continent of Africa, and some countries on the continent of Africa that have taught children to be assassins. Hear that? You can't get romantic about this. They have taught children how to be assassins. You know, so children, and then you see that they cannot go back to their homes because they have been responsible for the killing of uncles and aunts and their mothers and their fathers, you know. So what we're seeing is what I call the second middle passage. You don't put them on boats and bring them to America to enslave them, or to the Americas to enslave them. You leave them on the continent and you enslave them in other ways. Tribalism, right? Showing people how to kill, bringing back leaders who have been, in a very real sense, taught in Europe and Americas, right? And they go back, and their only response to their people is about money and bank accounts in Switzerland. That's real. That's not make-believe. So we can't be romantic about any place on this earth. What we must be very real and pragmatic about is how do we begin to teach people what it means to be human. Because the most important question we've got to answer in the 21st century is, what does it mean to be human? I don't care what color you be. What does it mean to be human? And that starts with our children all the way up until they move. And it's not about what job they get, what school they go to, but what does it mean to be human?